For those who know me, be it my friends, my clients, my community, you know that I am no stranger to keeping it real. And what I mean by that is I don't pretend that I'm healed, right? I don't pretend that I've reached some spiritual mountaintop where everything is perfectly peaceful, where I never get triggered, or where I somehow float above the human experience. And in fact, I've come to believe that mountaintop doesn't actually exist. There is no final destination where the work ends, where you've arrived, and suddenly you're exempt from being human. And when I was in my early 20s, first stepping into the world of spirituality and personal development, I was hungry. Hungry for truth, hungry to understand myself, hungry to figure out why I felt the way that I did, the anxiety, the longing, the deep ache of wanting to feel safe, seen, and connected. I wanted to know what shaped me, what wounds I was carrying, what beliefs were running beneath the surface, what ancestral stories I was unconsciously repeating. And so I dove in full throttle. I mean, therapy, energy work, Eastern spirituality, Kabbalah, shadow work, somatic healing, plant medicine, you name it. And every layer I peeled back, every teacher I met, every ceremony or ashram or temple I sat in, all became part of the lifelong devotion to remembering who I truly am. And through that journey, yes, I can say I have healed deeply. I have released so many layers of conditioning, of smallness, of self-doubt and shame and pain. And I've come home to parts of myself that I didn't even realize were missing. And I've watched my external world transform in ways that still to this day feel miraculous. I mean, relationships, love, purpose, abundance, all of it shifting as my inner world softened, healed, and aligned. But here's the truth that I've learned, and I keep learning it again and again and again. And that is that the work does not end. Because even as a facilitator, a therapist, a mentor, a guide, I am still human. I still have edges that rub against old wounds. I still have moments where fear tries to take the wheel. I still find myself grieving and recalibrating and remembering. And there are still days when I kind of forget, or when I have to remind myself to slow down and breathe, to come back to prayer, to humble myself, to return to my body, and to trust in the unfolding. And maybe that's the most important thing to remember on this spiritual path, that no matter how much healing you do, no matter how much light you access, you never stop being human. You just become more intimate with your humanity. And there is a lot of softening and self-acceptance in that intimacy with self. Because from that space, you learn how to hold it, how to love it, and how to alchemize it, instead of trying to escape it, which I think so many of us are doing. And that's what I'm here to elaborate on today, because it is so important to me that those who are on their healing path are given an honest and real understanding of what healing actually is. And not only that, but I also want to shine light on what it is that people like myself, who are facilitators, space holders, therapists, healers, practitioners of any kind, what's going on in our inner world when you place us on a pedestal and see us as having it all figured out. So let's get into it. Becoming a co-creator with the creator is your birthright. Together, we'll journey into your deepest authenticity, Because the more you align with who you truly are, the more effortlessly you call in the life that you desire and deserve. And most importantly, the more you step into your soul's highest purpose. Welcome to the Manifestation Method podcast, your number one source for Kabbalistic manifestation. Here we combine the ancient wisdom of Kabbalah, modern psychology, and quantum physics to help you achieve real, tangible manifestation results with my proven Abra method. I'm Ayelet Polonsky, and I'm here to guide you on your journey of manifesting a life that is aligned, expansive, and deeply connected to your highest self through the sacred energetic mechanics of Kabbalistic manifestation. To learn how to use Kabbalistic manifestation to transform your life from the inside out, go to ayeletpolonsky.com or download the Manifestation Method app. Let's open the gates of manifestation together. So something really interesting happens when you start holding space for others, right? When you become a therapist, facilitator, healer, whatever, right? Especially when you've been doing it for a long time. People start to look at you differently. And I'm speaking from personal experience, right? People see your calmness, your clarity, your capacity to hold energy, your ability to speak your truth, your ability to set healthy boundaries. They see you as someone who's got things figured out and you're able to offer guidance. And then they really begin to believe that you have it all figured out, that you've arrived, that you've transcended some struggle, or the struggle, I should say. And at first, this type of reflection from people, it feels really beautiful. It feels validating, right? Like all the years of shadow work, all the tears shed in ceremony, all of the integration and inner growth, it shows and people are seeing it and they can feel it. And you've become the embodiment of the work that you teach. And to a large extent, that is true. But what I've learned, and honestly, I learned this the hard way, is that pedestal energy is a test. It is an initiation all of its own. Because the moment someone places you above them, you're no longer relating as two souls on equal ground. So something subtle happens. A split begins to form. They hand you their power. They project their unmet longing onto you, their desire to be guided, seen, validated. I'd even go as far as to say even saved. And if you're not fully aware of that dynamic, it's so easy to just accept it unconsciously, to start believing that your role as the space holder is to be that savior. And that's really dangerous because there's a lot of projection going on here and a lot of ego. And we're going to unpack that more and more in today's episode. But first, I think it's important for us to really understand what is projection really. So let's break this down. Projection is when the mind takes something that lives inside of us. So let's say a quality, an emotion, a wound, a longing, and it then assigns that thing to someone else. Okay, so it's one of the most natural psychological defense mechanisms we have. And we all do it, right? Every single one of us. It's how the unconscious tries to make the invisible visible. And so it's if there's a part of us that we can't yet hold, maybe our power, our beauty, our worth, or even our anger, then we look for someone outside of us to carry it. Because it's easier to worship a teacher than to see that same light burning inside of ourselves. And it's easier to resent a leader for their mistakes than to face the pain of disappointment that echoes something much older. And that something much older is something that may have started in your childhood. right? So projection is not just about idolizing or idealizing, rather. It's about externalizing, placing outside of ourselves what we can't yet accept as our own. Okay, so it is the psyche's way of saying, I can't hold this right now, so I'm just going to see it in you instead. And we project both our light and our shadow, both the good qualities of us and also the qualities that we are ashamed of. So we project our divinity onto gurus. We project our power onto partners. We project our unworthiness onto our friends or our pain onto strangers. And that's why projection is such sacred medicine, if we know how to work with it consciously. Because every projection carries a clue, carries a message. It reveals where we're still disowning parts of ourselves. And so when someone places a teacher, a mentor, a guide on a pedestal, they're not really seeing that teacher. They're just seeing the reflection of the potential that already lives inside of them. And they're touching the edge of their own expansion, but they haven't yet realized that it's their expansion to claim. And similarly, on the flip side of that, because there's two sides to every light and shadow coin, right? So on the flip side, when we demonize someone or villainize someone, when we say that person hurt me or they're the reason I feel this way, we're actually being shown another side of projection, the shadow side of projection. It's not to bypass accountability, but rather to invite awareness. What is this experience mirroring back to me about where I still feel powerless, unseen, betrayed? Right? This is the essence of not taking responsibility for our stuff. It is the number, us projection is the quickest way to say, I can't admit or hold what I have in me because it makes me see myself as broken and that's too painful. So let me project onto you so that I can bypass and not have to see the thing in myself that is actually wanting to be revealed. Okay, so projection is the mirror through which the soul learns about itself. If you are brave enough to see yourself projecting when you're doing it. And it's not bad. It's just unfinished work waiting for ownership, waiting for you to take ownership. And so, as leaders or healers or facilitators, one of the deepest responsibilities we carry is to recognize projection when it's happening, right? Not to reject it, but to gently, lovingly guide it home. To help our clients, students, or community members remember that this love that you feel for me, this awe, this gratitude, it's actually you. It's your own light being mirrored back. And the same goes for discomfort or disappointment. So this pain you're feeling through me, it's pointing to something much older that's asking for your attention. Right? And that's why this work is so delicate and so holy. Because when projection is happening, we're touching the deepest layers of human vulnerability. It's the desire to be seen. It's the fear of abandonment. It's the longing for safety and belonging, right? And I see this in facilitation work, in ceremony space. When I'm working with people, what often happens when one is not aware of the projection that's taking place is I become the mother that abandoned them. Right? Or I become the villain or the abuser, whatever it is, because they're projecting onto me what's not sorted inside of themselves. And so then it becomes up to me to reflect very gently and lovingly that mirror back onto them in a way that they can become so that they can take responsibility for that piece. Okay? Because if we as facilitators mistake that projection, right? Even, let's say the positive form of projection, when we're being placed on a pedestal, or, in India, what I saw a lot with my guru was just the level of worship that took place, right? And so when we mistake that projection for love or validation, we reinforce the illusion that someone outside of us is actually our healer, right? But the truth is, no one heals you. They only remind you that you already have the capacity to heal yourself. And that's the truth. And that's really when real initiation happens. Because if I can be the source of someone's healing, I can just as easily become the source of their pain. If someone sees me as the one who fixed them, then the moment I disappoint them or fail to meet their unspoken expectations, I can quickly become the villain in their story. Right? And that's not because anyone is wrong. It's because projection is part of the path, one that both teacher and student are learning from. And that's where true leadership becomes a mirror, right? It really asks us as facilitators to constantly return power back to the people we serve, to remind them, I am not your source, you are. I can hold the lantern, but the light you're walking towards is your own light. And so to anyone who's listening who holds space, whether coach, therapist, guide, teacher, healer, mentor, right? This is the deep work of integrity. Hi, Ayelet here. I just wanted to pop in and say I am so excited to officially introduce the Manifestation Method portal, membership, and app. This is your home for all things Kabbalistic manifestation. You'll get access to my monthly live workshops, soul deep hypno activations and attunements, all of our manifestation courses, and our global community of manifestors. And the best part, it's just $26 a month. That's less than a latte a week. Come manifest alongside me and start creating the life you desire and deserve. Head over to ayeletpolonsky.com to join us. To remember that leadership is not about being above others, it's about standing beside them. It's not about being the one who knows, it's about being the one who listens. And it's not about performing perfection, it's simply about modeling presence, right? Real leadership is raw, it's humble, it's alive, it's dynamic. And real leadership says that I'm in the work with you. And so it's holding your own humanity while you hold others in theirs, and not putting yourself in this power position where you pretend that you have it all figured out. In fact, if you're listening and you are someone who has a mentor or a teacher or a guide or facilitator, I invite you to drink the medicine that knows that that person is also human and they are on a journey, and you are not really giving them the opportunity to be human when you see them as someone who's got it all figured out, right? And so the real role of a mentor or guide is never to replace God in someone's life. It's simply to guide them back to their own connection with the divine within, right? And that to me is the mark of a true teacher. Right? Not one who wants more followers, not one who wants to be worshipped, but one who teaches others how to follow their own light. Okay. And there is a subtle trap to spiritual ego here, right? All of this, the pedestal, the projection, the praise, it can really awaken something else inside of us if we're not careful. And that is spiritual ego, which is one of the trickiest parts of the human psyche. Right? Because spiritual ego wears the language of awakening. It wears the appearance of humility. It wears the aesthetic of enlightenment. But at its core, it's still the ego, right? It's just the ego with a spiritual makeover. And so instead of saying, I'm better because I am richer or prettier or more successful, it says, I'm better because I'm more conscious or more evolved or more healed, or I've been on the path longer, right? And so what it does is it hides behind spiritual vocabulary and noble intentions, but it's driven by the same old need. And that is to feel special, superior, better, or separate. To have identity, even if that identity is the identity of the awakened one. Right. And I say this with deep compassion because we have all met this part if we are doing the work. Right. Every single one of us who is on a spiritual path will at some point encounter the temptation of spiritual ego. Right. I've had to catch myself in those moments of like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this work for so long. I'm so evolved. Right. But I can laugh about it at least. Thank God. Right. And oftentimes the spiritual ego will show up like right after a big breakthrough or a powerful ceremony or some sort of mystical revelation or a profound healing. Right. You touch something true and luminous and you feel that direct connection with source. And so the ego, which actually never wants to die, nor should it, immediately tries to claim it. Right? It'll whisper, oh yeah, look at you. You've arrived. You've transcended. You're so evolved. You're not like the others anymore. It's so sneaky, this voice. And in that moment, the ego actually reinvents itself as the spiritual self. It's really important and really deep, right? But the truth is, consciousness doesn't need a hierarchy. Seriously, consciousness does not need a hierarchy. God doesn't play favorites, right? The soul doesn't measure enlightenment in levels. It just doesn't, souls just don't work that way. Right? And when I began facilitating deeper spaces, ceremonies, retreats, community gatherings, I started to feel the subtle pressure of this dynamic, right? People would come to me after a powerful experience and say things like, Ayala, you changed my life. And while I was deeply touched and so honored, I also felt something inside me that needed to stay awake. Right? Because if I started to believe that I was the one doing the healing, I knew I'd be feeding the very illusion that I was trying to dissolve. And if I took ownership of their transformation, then their pain, their breakthroughs, and their growth would also become mine to carry. And that's just not sustainable. Right? So I remember realizing very clearly, if I can be the source of someone's healing, I can just as easily become the source of their pain. And I don't want to be the source of either because I am not source. I just want to be the mirror that reflects God back to them, the reminder of their own light, the witness to their process, not the author of it. Because spiritual ego doesn't just inflate the leader, it actually disempowers the student. And it keeps both stuck in a loop of dependency rather than awakening. And that's the opposite of liberation. So let's be honest here, because spiritual ego can look deceptively holy. It can look like the teacher who speaks only in light language, but then can't handle conflict, right? It can look like the healer who refuses to admit they're triggered. Or it can look like the practitioner who preaches compassion, but secretly judges others for not being as conscious, right? But spiritual ego is not just limited to leaders. It lives inside of all of us who are on the path. Right? It's the voice that says, I'm more evolved than my family. They just don't get it. They just don't get it. They haven't done the work, right? Or it's the voice that says, I'm not meant to do regular jobs anymore because I'm above that, right? Or the voice that says, I only want high frequency people in my life. I cannot be around low vibrational people anymore, right? And listen, because this is important, right? The discernment is beautiful, right? Protecting your energy is essential, and I will be the first one to preach that. But if we use spirituality to separate rather than to connect, or to elevate ourselves above rather than to root ourselves in deeper compassion, then we've lost the whole point of becoming spiritual. So the irony of the spiritual ego is that it tries to reach God by becoming more special, when in truth, the way to reach God is by becoming more real, more honest, more raw, more vulnerable, more humble, more heart-centered. I can go on and on, right? But ultimately, it's by remembering that everyone is a spark of the divine, not just the ones who meditate at sunrise or attend ceremonies in the jungle. Okay, so how do we keep this part in check? Well, the answer is we stay devoted to our own practice. We let life, not just our teachings, become our mirror. And we surround ourselves with people who are not afraid to call us out and to remind us of our humanness. And we always, 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 and I swear by this, we stay curious instead of certain. The moment you think you've got it figured out is the moment you become the student again. You really know nothing. And I'm speaking in such a sharp way because I feel so passionate about this, right? I had a client of mine in a gathering once where I shared something honestly and vulnerably that I was working through. And the next morning he messaged me saying, wow, hearing you speak really sent me off on a journey, because this whole time I thought you had everything figured out. I thought you were light years ahead of me. Right. And that actually was quite heartbreaking to hear, because more than anything, it meant to me that he didn't allow space for me to be human, right? I had it all figured out. Doesn't allow space for me to be human, to be in process, to be learning, to be growing. And to be honest, like if I am working with anyone, if I hire someone to be my mentor, my teacher, my facilitator or therapist, the first thing I ask is, are you doing the work on yourself? Because the moment they say, no, I don't have any work to do, is the moment I run as fast as I can. Right? And so it's really important when we're on this journey that we keep returning to that witness consciousness, to that place inside that is able to observe without judgment, without attachment. Right? Because when I'm in the witness, then I'm not a yell at the teacher or a yell at the healer or a yell at the guide. I am simply awareness itself. And that awareness is God. Right? I become the field in which it's all unfolding. The student and the teacher, the pain and the peace, the fall and the rising. Right? And that's what keeps me grounded. It keeps me honest. And it's what I'm hoping and praying keeps my work pure, right? Because at the end of the day, leadership is not about power. It's about service. And that being said, I also just want to pause here and give you something truly important to hold on to, right? Because yes, the path of healing is lifelong, and yes, it doesn't end. And yes, it can feel messy and uncomfortable and sometimes even confusing, but I don't want that to be discouraging in any way, because this journey, which is one I've been on for 18 years, and I am going to be on it for the rest of my life because I wouldn't choose life to look any other way. It is so profoundly rewarding, because here's the truth. While the journey truly never ends, you are not the same person you were yesterday, last year, or 18 years ago. And that transformation matters deeply, right? I can say this from every cell of my body. I am not the person I was when I first stepped into this work 18 years ago. The old patterns, the limiting beliefs, the fears that once ruled my choices or my relationships, my sense of self, my ability to love myself, my ability to accept others, my ability to accept myself, my ability to soften, all of it, all of these experiences have shifted and melted and yes, in many ways evolved. Okay, and so I'd love to give you a few examples to make this tangible. How have I seen myself grow over 18 years of doing serious amounts of inner work? Okay, well, let's start with I am far more patient with myself and others, far more. I've learned that life unfolds in layers and that rushing to heal only creates friction, right? I now understand that timing is divine and that learning to wait, to really wait, is part of the mastery, right? I notice triggers that used to send me spiraling, sometimes for days or weeks. And while sometimes these triggers still arise with certain people, I respond much differently now, especially with certain family members. I am not the same person I was 18 years ago, not even 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 1 year ago. I am able to now catch myself so much more quickly before the old pattern takes over. And I know how to move through the sensations in my body so that I don't react unconsciously or so that I don't spiral, right? And I have cultivated the tools to be able to respond to these triggers from a place of choice and sovereignty and healthy energetic boundaries rather than from a place of fear and contraction. Okay, I now lead with more love in my relationships, in my work, with my clients, with my friends, with my community, in the way that I show up in the world, right? My patience, my compassion, my presence all have deepened in ways that feel unshakable. Also, my level of self-awareness is much stronger and deeper, right? I can really recognize my edges in the moment when they're happening, when they're being met. And I'm aware of my projections when I'm doing it and my blind spots. And I can really navigate them with curiosity rather than with judgment, right? It doesn't mean that new edges don't get met. It doesn't mean that I've put an end to projecting. It doesn't mean that I don't still have blind spots that are waiting to come into the realm of awareness so that I can alchemize them and work with them, right? But I'm able to spot them much more quickly and work with them in a way that I am composed, right? Composed in ways that have been unimaginable to my younger self. Okay. Also, my relationships, my family relationships with my parents, my siblings, my husband, my kids, my friends, community, professional, right? They're so much richer. They're more authentic than ever, right? I'm able to have challenging conversations from a place of real like understanding where the other person is coming from and being able to show up from that inner space of understanding and empathy and compassion while simultaneously holding myself and what it is that I need in those moments, right? Because I've finally learned, and I continue to learn, that real connection doesn't come from people pleasing or performing, but rather from showing up fully, vulnerably, and honestly. And finally, of the things I could think of, I hope there are more, but I have a much deeper, unbreakable connection with the Creator. You know, where once I might have felt alone or distant from source, I now feel a constant thread, a constant thread of guidance, love, and support that is woven through the tapestry of my very existence. In every moment of every day, I see the ways in which I am divinely held, guided, and protected. And that connection grounds me. It anchors me. And it reminds me that I am never, ever, ever for 1 second separate from source, right? Even in the most human, messy moments, right? And these are all milestones. They're not the end of my journey. They're not perfection, but they are real, meaningful growth. And these milestones are everywhere. They are in the quiet moments of self-reflection and in the courage to face a difficult truth and in the willingness to be seen when it's uncomfortable, right? It's in there in the decisions to forgive and release or embrace. Okay, so healing is not just about fixing what's broken. It's about discovering layers of yourself that you did not even know existed, right? It's about cultivating resilience and joy and trust and learning to live with greater alignment and integrity and presence, right? It's about moving from surviving to thriving, you know, even amidst the chaos and challenges of life, because those will always show up for all of us. Okay, so here's what I would love for you to really feel. that every step you've taken, every tear you've cried, every time you've sat with discomfort instead of running, it matters. It accumulates. It compounds. It builds the foundation for the next breakthrough, the next insight, the next moment of deep grace. And your journey is full of these subtle victories, right? Moments where you notice that you no longer react the way you used to. Moments where you see the growth in yourself mirrored in your relationships. So rewarding. Moments where you recognize your own strength and your own courage and your own capacity to love and be loved. Right? Moments where you walk into a social setting and where you once would be people pleasing or contorting yourself or shape shifting in order to fit into the image or personality you think someone else wants of you. And now you walk into a space living from your center, walking in from your center, right? Feeling aligned, feeling your existence. Okay. So even though the path of healing is lifelong, it is also magnificent. It is a path of continual awakening and discovery and grace and yes, profound, tangible transformation. And I promise you this from my own experience. If you look back just a few years or even a decade, you will see the proof of your evolution. You will see the patterns you've released, the clarity you've gained, the depth of compassion you've cultivated. And I am living proof of that truth. And I am also living proof that it never ends, right? 18 years of dedicated inner work. I am not the same person I was when I started, right? And yet there is always more to uncover and more to learn and more to integrate. And that is not something I fear now. That is something I deeply celebrate with reverence, because that is what it means to be a human, to be a continuous unfolding masterpiece. And every layer of growth, every milestone, every awakening, it's all part of the beauty of this journey. And honestly, that is one of the reasons why I created why I put together this podcast, why I share these episodes, why I do the work that I do, and really why I've also created the Manifestation Method membership. It's an online platform. Many of you know it as the portal. I have the honor of working with so many of you from all over the world, meeting with you live once a month, right? And offering you the best of my material at a super affordable price. And really the reason I do this, or one thing I want you to remember in my offering, is that it's not about me being your guide on a pedestal. It's about walking together through healing, integration, and remembering. It's about community, real community, where vulnerability and curiosity and divine reflection are all part of the process, and we're all cheering each other on inside this portal, right? We get to be raw and real, right? Because inside the membership, nobody pretends that anyone has arrived. We're all remembering and celebrating our transformation, because there's a heck of a lot of that as well. Right? We're all practicing the art of embodiment and faith and surrender and trust. And we use the tools that I offer, the hypno activations, the teachings, the somatic practices, the new moon workshops, right? Not to escape our humanness, but to bring more consciousness, awareness, and healing to it in every moment, right? Because that's what true spirituality is. It's not about transcending life. It's about becoming more fully alive inside it, right? More grounded, more embodied, more attuned to the divine mystery that lives inside of every breath, in every relationship, in every experience, even the messy ones, right? And so that's the work. That's the practice. And that's why I'll never claim to have it all figured out. Because if I did, I'd stop learning. And the moment I stop learning, I stop leading. So wherever you are on your journey, whether you're leading, you're a student, or you're walking solo for a season, remember this. We are all learning. We are all healing. We are all remembering who we truly are. And that remembering never ends. because it's not a destination. It's not a checklist. It's a living, breathing process. And it keeps unfolding. Even when you stumble, even when you forget yourself, even when the world reminds you of your edges or your wounds, the remembering is still there, right? It's a flame that can never be extinguished, right? It's a flame that is always waiting and ready to be tended to, always waiting for you to light the path back home. So next time you feel the pressure to have it all figured out, or the temptation to compare your journey to someone else's, or to the weight of expectations placed on you, whether from others or from yourself, pause, breathe, and remember, the work is not about perfection. It's about presence. The work is about witnessing yourself, others' life with open-hearted curiosity and compassion. And your journey is sacred and the steps are meaningful. And no matter what, you're never outside of the journey. You're never separate. Even in moments of doubt, even in the moments of I'm not enough, the truth remains. And that is that you are made in Tselem Elohim. You are made in the image of the Creator. And you have within you a spark of the infinite. So you are always, already, in every moment, home. And so as you carry this remembrance forward, I bless you that it ripple through everything you do, through your relationships, your work, your healing, your play, your prayer, your intimacy, your rest. Because each time you remember who you are, you remind the world to do the same. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If this episode would resonate with someone who you believe needs to hear this exact message, please pay it forward, spread the love. And until next time, here's to your rising. If you enjoyed this episode, let's keep the conversation going inside the Manifestation Method Portal app, your #1 destination for Kabbalistic manifestation. Inside, you'll unlock the secrets of manifestation through my proven Abra method, rooted in Kabbalah, psychology, and quantum physics, designed to help you manifest real, tangible results from the inside out. Join our global community of manifestors, explore our signature courses, monthly live manifestation workshops with me, Ayelet, and access our transformational hypno activations and attunements to rewire limiting beliefs and align with your soul's purpose. The app is available now on the Apple App Store and Google Play. To sign up, head over to ayeletpolonsky.com. Becoming a co-creator with the Creator is your birthright. Let's manifest the life you desire and deserve together.